She was forced to marry a disabled man. What her stepmother didn't know will shock you. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. In a peaceful village, Maya was the beloved daughter of Chief Emeka, one of the wealthiest and most respected men in the land. Her life was filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Chief Emeka, known for his generosity and humility, often shared stories of their family's legacy and reminded Maya that she was his precious gem and the greatest treasure he had. The bond between father and daughter was unbreakable, and Maya's world was safe and secure. However, this perfect life was shattered when Chief Emeka fell gravely ill. Despite the village healer's best efforts, the illness was too powerful. In his final days, he held Maya's hand and whispered, "You are strong. You are wise. Always remember who you are and where you come from." With those words, Chief Emeka passed away, leaving Maya heartbroken and alone in a world that no longer seemed safe or joyful. After her father's death, everything changed. Margaret, Maya's stepmother, and her two stepsisters, Sophie and Ella, revealed their true nature. They took control of her father's wealth, casting Maya aside and treating her like a servant in the mansion she once called home. Maya, once the cherished daughter of a respected chief, now scrubbed floors and washed clothes, facing scorn and mockery from her family. Yet, despite the cruelty around her, she clung to her father's memory, repeating to herself every night, "I am Maya, my father's daughter. No one can take my light." One day, Margaret announced that a suitor had been found for Maya. He was blind, from a modest background, and willing to marry without a dowry, a proposal Margaret saw as a blessing. Maya's heart sank. She did not want to marry a stranger, especially under such circumstances. But with no other choice, Maya reluctantly agreed to the marriage, which was quickly arranged. The life she once dreamed of now seemed distant, and her future felt like it was slipping away. Her soon-to-be husband, Adrian, was a tall, gentle man who wore dark glasses and leaned on a cane. His voice was soft and comforting, and Maya found herself surprisingly at ease with him, despite her reluctance. But Adrian, unknown to her, was not the poor man Margaret believed him to be. He was a prince, one of the wealthiest in the kingdom. Disillusioned by people who sought him only for his wealth, Adrian had chosen to disguise himself as a blind commoner to find true love. As Maya adjusted to her new life, she began to see a different side of Adrian. Despite his blindness, he was independent, capable, and kind. He showed her respect and never demanded more than she was willing to give. Slowly, Maya started to feel a shift in her heart. She began to trust him, though doubts about his true identity lingered. She noticed small signs of wealth, luxurious items that no poor man could afford, and the mystery of Adrian deepened. Despite her growing connection to Adrian, Maya couldn't escape the shadow of her past. One day, during a village festival, she encountered her stepmother and stepsisters again, who mocked her life with Adrian, unaware of his true identity. For the first time, Maya stood up to Margaret, declaring that she was happy with her new life. Margaret sneered, but Maya stood firm, feeling the strength of Adrian's support. Maya's journey was only beginning. The woman who had once been a daughter of privilege now stood on the brink of a new life, a life filled with uncertainty, but also with the hope that one day her father's love and wisdom would guide her to the peace and love she had longed for. The days after Maya's father's death were like a heavy cloud that never seemed to lift. As she went about her chores, the once grand mansion now felt like a cold, empty shell. The echoes of her father's laughter and wisdom seemed to grow fainter with each passing day, drowned out by the sharp, mocking voices of Margaret, Sophie, and Ella. Every room she entered reminded her of what she had lost, not just the wealth and grandeur, but the love and security her father had provided. Margaret, seeing Maya as little more than a burden, had already begun to plan her future. The moment Maya's father passed, Margaret's true nature revealed itself. She had no desire to keep the family wealth intact for Maya. Instead, she wanted to rid herself of Maya entirely, so she decided it was time to marry her off. A marriage to a man she had never met, to a man who was blind and of humble means, would be the perfect way to do so. For Margaret, it was simply a means to an end, but for Maya, it felt like a cruel and unforgivable betrayal. It was a morning much like any other when Margaret made her announcement. She had found a suitor for Maya. "He is a blind man from a modest background," Margaret said, her voice dripping with indifference. "And best of all, he will marry you without a dowry, which will save us from any further expenses." Maya's heart sank as her stepmother spoke. No dowry. It felt like an insult. She didn't even know the man, and now she was being told she had no choice but to marry him. There was no love, no affection, no consideration for her feelings. Just a cold, calculating decision to rid herself of the last shred of responsibility. Maya had always dreamed of marrying for love, of one day finding someone who would cherish her as her father had. But now, all those dreams were gone, replaced by the harsh reality of an arranged marriage. Her future was slipping through her fingers, like sand on a windy beach. But she had no voice, no choice. She had been reduced to nothing more than a pawn in Margaret's cruel game. The wedding was planned with haste, as though Margaret was eager to wash her hands of Maya as quickly as possible. Maya was forced into preparations she had no desire to make, picking out a wedding dress she didn't want to wear, and preparing to marry a man she had never even met. Every step she took felt like a loss, as if the world she had known was slipping further and further away. The day of the wedding arrived, and Maya felt like she was walking down a path toward a future she couldn't control. When she finally met Adrian, her soon-to-be husband, she was struck by how different he seemed from what she had imagined. Adrian stood tall, his posture straight, but with an air of gentleness. His eyes were hidden behind thick, dark glasses, and he walked with the aid of a sturdy cane. His blindness was the first thing Maya noticed, but what struck her more deeply was his calm demeanor. When he spoke, his voice was soft but steady, with a warmth that seemed to fill the air between them. He asked her simple questions about her life, as if he genuinely wanted to get to know her. Despite herself, Maya felt a small flicker of comfort. She was so used to being ignored or treated like an outsider by her family that Adrian's simple act of listening felt like a breath of fresh air. But there was sadness in his eyes that she couldn't quite place, a depth of emotion that hinted at something more. As they spoke, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, but she wasn't sure what. Adrian, however, was not the poor, blind man he appeared to be. He was, in fact, a prince, Prince Adrian, one of the wealthiest men in the kingdom. He had chosen to hide his royal lineage, disillusioned by people who were more interested in his status and wealth than in him as a person. He longed for a woman who would love him for who he was, not for his title. And when he met Maya, he was drawn to her gentleness, her resilience, and the way she seemed unaffected by her circumstances. She didn't seek sympathy or complain, even though she had endured so much. Adrian kept his secret close, hoping that over time, Maya would come to love him for the person he truly was, beneath the disguise of blindness and modesty. But Maya was still grieving the loss of her father and felt like a stranger in her own life. She wanted to trust Adrian, but the wound of betrayal by her stepmother and her family was still fresh. How could she trust someone she barely knew? That first night in Adrian's home was filled with uncertainty. Maya had no belongings to speak of, save for the few things she had brought with her. She missed her father, missed the home she once knew, and felt as though she was trapped in a world she had never chosen. She had been forced into a life she couldn't control, and her heart longed for the days when she was loved and cherished, not just as an afterthought. Yet, as the days passed, Adrian's kindness began to make an impact. He treated her with a respect she had never known from her stepmother or stepsisters. Despite his blindness, Adrian was capable. He could cook, take care of their small garden, and even carve beautiful wooden figures. The more time Maya spent with him, the more she realized that he wasn't the helpless, pitiful man she had imagined. Adrian was independent, skillful, and above all, kind. For the first time in a long while, Maya started to feel a sense of safety and peace in his presence. Their home was modest, nothing like the grand mansion she had once known, but it was warm. It was a place where she felt seen, not as a servant, not as a burden, but as someone worthy of love and respect. Still, doubts lingered in Maya's heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian was hiding something. Every so often, she noticed things: expensive furniture, beautiful blankets, and fine herbal remedies that no poor man could afford. The questions gnawed at her, and she couldn't help but wonder. Was there more to Adrian than he was letting on? It wasn't until the village's annual festival that the mystery surrounding Adrian deepened. The festival was filled with dancing, music, and celebration, and for the first time in months, Maya found herself laughing and dancing freely. Adrian guided her through the traditional dance with surprising skill, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. She forgot about her past, about her stepmother's cruelty, and let herself enjoy the present. But that joy was short-lived when she spotted Margaret and her stepsisters in the crowd, their faces twisted with judgment. Margaret pulled Maya aside, her voice dripping with disdain. "So, you're playing the happy wife now, are you? Don't think this life will last forever. You're nothing more than a blind man's wife. Don't get too comfortable." The sting of her words cut deep, but Maya found strength in Adrian's presence. "I may not have everything, but I have a life of peace and respect," she said, her voice steady, surprising even herself with her boldness. Margaret sneered and walked away, but Maya could feel her stepmother's eyes lingering on them, as if sensing something more about Adrian. As the days passed, the mystery surrounding Adrian grew. Maya couldn't ignore the signs: his visitors, his wealth, his calm confidence. Her heart began to ache with the uncertainty of it all. But despite everything, she couldn't deny the one thing she had started to feel. Adrian treated her with a respect no one else had ever shown her. And for the first time in a long time, Maya started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this marriage, forced though it may have been, could lead to something more than she had ever expected. As the days passed in the small, humble home that Maya now called her own, she began to notice the subtle changes in her heart. The anger, the sadness, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that had once consumed her seemed to soften, piece by piece, as Adrian's presence filled the space around her. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Maya found herself growing closer to him. It wasn't the grand gestures that moved her. There were none. No grand declarations of love, no elaborate gifts or extravagant promises. It was the little things, the quiet acts of kindness, the steady, unshakable respect that Adrian showed her every day. She watched as he worked in the garden, tending to the plants with a delicate hand and a patient demeanor. He never rushed, always taking his time to nurture the life around him, just as he nurtured their home. Adrian also had a gift for carving wood, a talent that astonished Maya. He would spend hours in the evenings, his hands moving with surprising skill, crafting beautiful figures that seemed to capture the essence of nature itself. These small creations, delicate yet strong, reminded her of Adrian's character, unassuming, humble, but profoundly deep. In the evenings, when the day's work was done, they would sit together in the quiet of their small home, their simple meals shared in comfortable silence. At first, Maya found herself hesitant, unsure of how to break the stillness. But over time, Adrian's calm presence made it easier to speak. He was a patient listener, never rushing her words or making her feel as though she was burdening him. Maya found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't thought possible. She told him about her father, the love he had shown her, the way his stories had made her feel safe in the world. She shared her pain, the emptiness she had felt after his death, and the overwhelming sadness that came with losing not just her father, but the life she had known. Adrian listened quietly, his eyes softening with empathy as she spoke. He never interrupted her, never offered empty platitudes. He simply listened, his presence a comforting balm on her wounded soul. Maya began to realize that, despite his own silence, Adrian had a deep well of understanding. There was a sadness in him too, a burden he carried that Maya could sense but never quite understood. Though they had shared only a short time together, something was slowly shifting in Maya's heart. She began to trust Adrian, not completely, but more than she had trusted anyone in a long time. The doubts that had initially clouded her mind, the suspicion that he was hiding something, began to fade as she saw the care with which he treated her. It was more than just kindness. It was respect, the kind of respect she hadn't known from anyone else, not even her family. Still, there was a mystery surrounding Adrian, one that Maya couldn't quite shake. Every so often she noticed things, small hints of wealth that no poor man could afford, a fine bottle of herbal medicine that smelled expensive, a beautifully carved chair in their home that looked far too intricate to be made by someone without means. There were times when Maya would catch a glimpse of Adrian's posture, so sure and confident, or the way he moved with such fluidity, as though he were not truly blind. But these moments were fleeting, and each time, Maya would tell herself that it didn't matter. What mattered, she thought, was how Adrian made her feel. What mattered was the warmth in his voice, the gentleness in his touch, the way he never pushed her for anything. He treated her like a partner, not a possession. He valued her as an equal, something she had never experienced before. And somewhere deep inside, Maya began to realize that this might be the love she had always dreamed of, simple, honest, and pure. One afternoon, as Maya made her way to the village well, she overheard a conversation between two women. They were speaking in hushed tones, their voices laced with curiosity. "Did you know that man Maya married?" one woman whispered. "He's blind, right?" The other woman nodded. "Poor thing. I heard some strange things about him. They say he wasn't always blind, that he's hiding something." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she listened, the words echoing in her mind. Hiding something. Could it be that Adrian was not the man he had led her to believe? Was there more to him than his gentle demeanor and humble ways? She tried to push the thoughts away. "It doesn't matter," she told herself. "He's been nothing but kind to me." But despite her resolve, a small seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few days, Maya found herself watching Adrian more closely, searching for signs that might explain the mystery surrounding him. She noticed how he could move around their home with such precision, as though he could see. How he never seemed to stumble, even when walking in unfamiliar places. Could he really be blind? The question lingered, gnawing at the back of her mind. Then came the village's annual festival, a celebration of life, music, and tradition. Maya had been hesitant to go, still uncertain about her place in Adrian's world, but he insisted. "It's something magical about being with the people," he told her, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "You'll feel it too." Maya agreed, and together they went to the festival. For the first time in what felt like ages, Maya found herself laughing, dancing, and enjoying the music that filled the air. The weight of her past seemed to lift as the festive spirit surrounded her. In Adrian's arms, she felt safe, as if she had found a place where she truly belonged. The rhythm of the dance was natural, and she was surprised at how easily Adrian guided her through the steps, his movements graceful despite his apparent blindness. He held her close, and for that moment, it felt as though nothing else mattered. But just as the joy of the festival filled her heart, it was interrupted. Across the crowd, she saw Margaret and Sophie, her stepmother and stepsister, standing with cold, bitter expressions. Margaret's eyes narrowed as she watched Maya, her gaze sharp with judgment. Without a word, Margaret pulled Maya aside, her voice dripping with disdain. "So," Margaret sneered, "you're parading around like some happy wife now? Don't get too comfortable, Maya. This life will never be as grand as the one you had with your father." Maya felt a surge of anger rise within her, but it was quickly replaced with a sense of resolve. Adrian's hand rested firmly on her shoulder, grounding her in the moment. She looked her stepmother in the eye and said, "I may not have everything, but I have a life filled with peace and respect. That's all that matters." For the first time, Maya felt the full weight of her father's lessons, of the strength he had instilled in her. And for the first time, she was able to stand her ground and not let Margaret's venomous words touch her. Margaret sneered and turned away, but Maya noticed something strange in her stepmother's eyes, a flicker of confusion, as if Margaret sensed that there was more to Adrian than she had assumed. As the days passed, Maya continued to notice these small moments that didn't quite add up. Adrian's quiet confidence, his ability to navigate the world so gracefully despite his blindness, and the strange visitors who had come to their home. It wasn't long before Maya overheard more whispers in the village. People were beginning to talk. "Could he really be who he says he is?" the whispers asked. "Is he hiding something?" Maya's curiosity deepened, but she also began to understand that perhaps the mystery was not what mattered. What mattered was the person Adrian had shown himself to be. His kindness, his respect, his love. Those were the things that Maya had come to value. And as her feelings for him grew stronger, the doubts that had once clouded her heart began to fade. Adrian's secret, whatever it was, would come to light when the time was right. But for now, Maya decided that she would trust him. After all, wasn't that what love was about? Trusting in the person you chose to stand by, even in the face of uncertainty? And with that thought, Maya took Adrian's hand, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, and smiled. The journey ahead might still be filled with questions and mysteries, but in this moment, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer walking alone. As the weeks passed, the quiet, intimate life Maya shared with Adrian became a haven from the world outside. His kindness, his patience, and the respect he showed her every single day slowly built a foundation of trust that Maya never thought possible. She no longer felt like the lost, broken girl from her past. With Adrian by her side, she began to heal. She felt valued for the first time in years, not just as a daughter or a servant, but as a woman worthy of love and respect. But despite all the comfort she had found in Adrian's presence, the questions about his past never fully disappeared. The mystery surrounding him lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. Every time Maya caught him moving with effortless grace, or noticed another expensive object in their humble home, her mind would race. She couldn't help herself. Who was Adrian, really? One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the cool evening breeze filled their small home, Maya sat across from Adrian at the wooden table, her mind once again filled with the questions she hadn't dared to ask. He had been so open with her about his life, his struggles, and the pain he had endured. Yet there was still so much he had left unsaid. Adrian, as if sensing her unease, looked up from the wooden figure he was carving. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something new in them. Vulnerability. "Maya," he said, his voice soft yet firm, "there is something I need to tell you. Something important." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment she had been dreading and longing for all at once. The truth about who Adrian really was. She could feel it in the air, thick with the unspoken words between them. Slowly, she set down her cup of tea and leaned forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm not just a simple man, Maya," Adrian began, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm not truly blind." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had known, in some part of her heart, that Adrian wasn't exactly who he seemed, but hearing him say the words out loud sent a jolt of shock through her. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling, though she tried to hold on to the calm that had come over her. Adrian took a deep breath and placed his carving tool down. He met her gaze, his expression serious, yet tinged with a deep sadness that Maya had never seen before. "My name is not just Adrian," he said, his voice steady now. "I am Prince Adrian, and I come from a kingdom far from here." Maya's mind raced. A prince. Her husband, a prince. The words felt foreign in her mouth as she repeated them in her mind. Prince Adrian. She had married a prince? But there was more. Adrian continued, "I didn't want anyone to love me for my title or wealth. I wanted to find someone who could love me for who I am, not for what I can offer." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I chose to live as a blind commoner because I wanted to escape the shallowness of the world that only cared about my status. I wanted to find real love, Maya. I wanted to find you." The shock of his revelation settled in slowly, like a fog that enveloped her thoughts. Adrian was not the man she had married out of obligation. He wasn't the poor, blind stranger she had thought him to be. He was a prince, a man of power and wealth, hiding his true identity to find something far more precious, someone who would love him for his heart, not his riches. Maya felt a rush of emotions, swirling inside her like a storm. Betrayal. Confusion. Relief. She had married a prince, but had she been deceived? Was this all a game to him? A test to see if she could love him for who he truly was? Or was he just trying to escape the trappings of his royal life, seeking solace in a world that was far removed from the expectations placed on him? "Maya, I understand that this might be a lot to take in," Adrian said, his voice softer now. "But I need you to know that I never wanted to deceive you. I never wanted to hurt you. The man you married is me, Maya. I am the man who values you more than anything. The man who wants to build a life with you, regardless of the crown on my head or the wealth in my hands." For a long moment, Maya said nothing. The world around her felt like it had shifted on its axis. The truth, once so elusive, now stood in front of her in the form of the man she had come to care for deeply. Her mind buzzed with questions, but there was one thing she knew for certain. Adrian had never treated her like a pawn in some royal game. He had never tried to manipulate her. He had always been kind, gentle, and patient, showing her respect in ways no one else ever had. But still, the doubts lingered. She had trusted him. Could she continue to trust him now that she knew the full truth? She looked into his eyes, searching for something that would give her the answers she needed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. "Because I was afraid, Maya," he admitted. "Afraid that you wouldn't see me as who I truly am. Afraid that you would only see the prince, not the man I've become. I wanted to find someone who would love me for my heart, not for my title. And when I found you, I knew you were the one. I knew you were different." Maya felt a wave of emotion wash over her, her heart swelling with a mix of love and uncertainty. Adrian had risked everything to find her, to find someone who could love him without knowing who he truly was. It was a gesture of vulnerability, of trust. And yet, in the same breath, it left her with a feeling of betrayal. But as she looked at him, truly looked at him, she saw not a prince hiding behind a disguise, but the same man who had been kind to her when no one else had. The same man who had listened to her pain and shared his own. The same man who had never asked for anything more than her honesty and her heart. "I don't care about your title, Adrian," Maya said softly, her voice steady. "I never did. I married you for you. I love you for who you are, not for what you have or what you were born into." Tears welled up in Adrian's eyes as he reached for her hand. "Maya, you've given me more than I ever imagined. You've given me your heart, your trust, and your love. I never thought I would find someone like you." Maya smiled, her heart full of love for this man who had given her everything without asking for anything in return. "And you've given me something I never thought I would have," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've given me the chance to be loved, truly loved, for who I am." In that moment, everything shifted. The mystery was gone. The doubts faded. What remained was the truth. Adrian had hidden his identity to protect his heart, to find real love. And Maya, despite the shock and the unexpected twists in their story, knew deep down that this was where she was meant to be. With Adrian, the man who loved her for who she was and who she had come to love, not because of his title or his wealth, but because of the kindness, respect, and love he had shown her from the very beginning. The truth had been revealed, and with it came a new chapter in their story, one filled with promise, love, and the hope that they could build a life together, free from the shadows of their pasts. The revelation of Adrian's true identity hung in the air like an invisible thread, binding Maya to the man she had come to care for so deeply, Prince Adrian. The words seemed foreign to her, almost impossible to reconcile with the man she had spent the past months growing to love. And yet, there was no denying it. The man she had married, the man who had held her hand through grief and uncertainty, was more than just a kind, humble soul. He was a prince, a man of wealth and power, and the truth had been hidden from her for so long. But what did it mean now? What did it mean for her love for Adrian, the life they had built together, and the quiet peace she had found in his arms? All of it was now laced with questions. The mystery that had been swirling around Adrian's life was no longer just a puzzle. It was a key to a hidden door, one that Maya was uncertain whether she wanted to open. She lay awake that night, the moonlight streaming through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. Adrian was asleep beside her, his breathing steady, his presence a comfort, even though her heart was still racing with thoughts of the truth he had shared. She had promised him her trust, but trust, she realized, was not always a clear path. Trust was a journey she had to choose to take, despite the doubts that still clung to her mind. As the days passed, Maya found herself grappling with the complexity of Adrian's secret. He had kept it hidden from everyone, even from her. But his reasoning, she understood. He had wanted love, not as a prince, but as a man. He had wanted to find someone who could love him for who he was inside, not the crown he wore. And perhaps, she thought, he had succeeded. She loved him for his heart, for the man he had shown her. The title, the wealth, it had never mattered to her. What mattered was Adrian, the person who had been with her through her struggles, who had helped her heal and grow stronger. Yet the more she thought about it, the more she began to question how long Adrian had been hiding this truth. The prince who stood before her was not just any man. He was someone with a life she had only glimpsed, someone who had lived in the shadows of his own world. Adrian's past, his royal duties, his kingdom, was a world so far removed from Maya's own. She was a simple girl from a modest background, and her life had been shaped by loss and struggle. Adrian's life had been filled with luxury and expectation, bound by the responsibilities of being a prince. The two worlds seemed impossible to reconcile. What would happen now? Would their love be enough to bridge the gap between their vastly different lives? Maya couldn't deny that a small part of her felt betrayed, not by Adrian, but by the circumstances of his life. She had wanted to believe in their story, in the simplicity of their connection. But now, that story seemed complicated, tainted by the secrets Adrian had kept. She needed answers, not just from Adrian, but from herself. What did she want from him now? Was she ready to step into his world, knowing the weight of his royal lineage? One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Maya finally found the courage to ask the questions that had been circling in her mind. Adrian had been quiet, lost in thought, as he often was these days. Maya watched him, her heart heavy with the uncertainty she was feeling. She had to know. "Adrian," she began softly, her voice tentative, "there's something I still don't understand." He looked up at her, his expression gentle but wary. "What is it, Maya? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I don't understand. Why keep something so important hidden from me? You said you wanted someone who loved you for you. But what if that love isn't enough? What if I can't love you in the way you need me to?" Adrian's face softened, and for a moment he seemed lost in thought. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand, holding it gently in his. "I never wanted to burden you with the weight of my title, Maya," he said, his voice low and earnest. "I was afraid that you would see me only as the prince. I wanted you to see me as the man I've become, not the man I was born to be. My world, it's full of expectations, obligations, and pressures I didn't want you to carry with me. I wanted us to have something simple, something real, without the weight of my past following us." Maya listened, her heart torn between the man she had come to love and the reality of the world he came from. Adrian's words made sense. He had kept his secret not out of malice, but out of fear of losing the one thing that mattered most to him, her love. But could she accept this life? Could she accept a life where she was no longer just Maya, but the wife of a prince, carrying the responsibility of a kingdom on her shoulders? Adrian continued, "I didn't want to bring you into my world until I was certain you loved me for who I was, not for what I could give you. I know it's complicated now, but I needed to be sure, Maya. I needed to be sure that the love we had was real, not clouded by my position or my title." Maya felt a deep ache in her chest. She understood his reasons, and a part of her admired the courage it took for Adrian to live this way, hiding his identity for so long. But another part of her felt overwhelmed by the weight of the truth. Her life had never been simple. She had always known loss, struggle, and hardship. But Adrian's world, she realized, was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. For the first time, she saw the full picture of his life. The kingdom, the responsibilities, the expectations. Adrian was not just a man with a hidden secret. He was the future king of a kingdom, and she was now part of that world. Could she truly step into that life? Could she handle the demands of being a princess, the weight of the throne that might one day rest on Adrian's shoulders? Adrian seemed to sense the turmoil in her heart. He squeezed her hand, pulling her from her thoughts. "Maya, I never expected you to love me for my wealth or my title. I love you because you've shown me a life that's real, a life that's full of heart. I want you by my side, not because of who I am, but because of who we are together." Maya looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw not just a prince, but the man who had made her feel seen, loved, and cherished. His kingdom, his title, the royal blood that ran through his veins. It didn't matter. What mattered was the person Adrian had shown her to be, the man who had stood by her through thick and thin, who had never asked for anything but her heart. "I don't know what the future holds, Adrian," Maya said softly, "but I do know this. When I look at you, I see the man who has loved me when no one else did. I see the man who has shown me kindness, respect, and patience. I love you, Adrian. Not because you're a prince, but because of who you are. A tear slipped down Adrian's cheek as he pulled her into an embrace, his arms wrapping around her like a protective shield. "Thank you, Maya," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for loving me, not for what I am, but for who I am." In that moment, Maya understood. The truth about Adrian's past no longer mattered. What mattered was the love they shared, the bond that had grown between them through honesty, patience, and trust. Adrian had hidden his secret for fear of losing her, but in revealing it, he had only drawn her closer. They were no longer two separate lives. Maya had become a part of his world, and he had become a part of hers. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, not as a prince and his wife, but as two souls who had found each other in a world that had once seemed so uncertain. And for the first time, Maya felt truly ready to embrace whatever the future held, as long as it was with Adrian by her side. The days that followed Adrian's confession were a whirlwind for Maya, and yet they were oddly quiet too. The world outside their little home seemed distant, as though the truth that had just been revealed had set them apart from the rest of the world. Maya had always prided herself on her ability to navigate life with clarity, but now everything felt blurred and uncertain. She had learned more about Adrian than she ever thought possible, and yet the answers to her questions only raised new ones. Adrian had been a prince, living a life of grandeur and responsibility, hidden behind the veil of blindness and humility. She had always known there was something more to him, his quiet confidence, his ability to understand her without words. But even now, as they settled into their routine, Maya couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that lingered in her heart. Was she truly ready for this? Was she ready to step into a world so vastly different from the one she had known? And yet every time she looked at Adrian, the doubts seemed to melt away. She saw the man who had held her through her darkest days, who had shown her a kind of love that transcended everything else. His royal blood, his title, his past. They didn't matter in the face of the love they shared. But there were still pieces of his life that she didn't fully understand. She had always known that Adrian wasn't just a simple man, but the full scope of his life had been kept hidden from her, and it was time to learn the whole truth. His kingdom, the one he had left behind to find her, seemed like an entire world apart. Maya couldn't imagine what that world was like, but she needed to know. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, the soft crackle of the wood the only sound between them, Maya turned to Adrian, her heart heavy with unspoken questions. She had made peace with the fact that he was a prince. But what about the rest of his world? What had he given up to live this quiet, simple life with her? "Adrian," she said, her voice low but steady, "I need to know more. I understand now who you are, but I still don't understand everything. What was your life like before we met? What was it really like for you, as a prince?" Adrian's eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was a flicker of sadness in them, perhaps the sadness of a life he had chosen to leave behind, a life full of expectations and duties he never asked for. He sighed, a deep, almost painful breath, before he began to speak. "I was born into a life of luxury, Maya," he began, his voice quiet, almost as if he were speaking to himself. "I was the heir to a throne, the future ruler of a vast kingdom. My family, my people had high expectations of me. I was groomed for leadership from the moment I was born. There were tutors, strict rules, and countless responsibilities, but in all that, I never felt free. People didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a title, a role. I was never allowed to live for myself. Everything I did, everything I said, was measured by what others thought of me." Maya listened intently, her heart aching for Adrian as he spoke. She had known his life must have been full of challenges, but hearing it in his own words made her realize how much he had sacrificed to be with her. "The worst part," Adrian continued, was the constant pressure to marry for power, for alliances, for the kingdom's benefit. My parents were constantly pushing me to choose a wife from the nobility, someone who would strengthen our position, someone who could help me rule. But I didn't want that. I didn't want a marriage that was based on politics and power. I wanted someone who would love me for who I was, not because of what I could give her. Maya's heart swelled with sympathy, but at the same time it only confirmed what she had already known about Adrian. His heart had never been about power or status. His heart had always been about love, kindness, and the desire for something real. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers gently brushing his. "Adrian, you don't have to tell me all this," Maya said softly. "I already know that you left all of that behind because of what you wanted. You wanted to be free, and you wanted to find someone who would see you for you." Adrian squeezed her hand, a small, bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. "I left all of it behind, Maya. The throne, the riches, the title, all of it. I thought that maybe I could find peace, that I could live a life without the weight of it all. But then, I found you, and for the first time, I felt like I had a chance at something real." Maya's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. She understood now, in a way she hadn't before, just how much Adrian had sacrificed. It wasn't just the title, the wealth, or the responsibilities of being a prince that he had given up. It was everything. He had given up the life he had known to be with her, to find love, to find something that had nothing to do with power or position. For a moment, the weight of everything between them seemed to lift. The doubts and uncertainties that had lingered in her heart faded away. She saw Adrian not just as the man she had married, but as someone who had taken the hardest path to find the one thing that truly mattered: love. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Adrian," Maya said, her voice filled with emotion. "But I know this. I love you, and I will stand by you no matter what. I'm ready to face whatever comes next." Together. Adrian's eyes softened as he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "I don't deserve you, Maya," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But I will spend every day of my life showing you how much you mean to me." And in that moment, Maya knew that no matter what challenges they would face, no matter what the future might bring, they had each other. The truth had been revealed, not just about Adrian's past, but about their love, deep, unshakable, and real. They had both been searching for something their entire lives. Maya, for a place where she belonged, and Adrian, for someone who could love him for who he truly was. Now, they had found it in each other. As they sat together by the fire, the world outside seemed to fade away. They were no longer bound by secrets or doubts. They were simply two people, two souls, who had found their way to each other. And nothing, not even the complexities of royal blood or humble beginnings, could take that away. The future was uncertain, yes, but as long as they had each other, Maya knew that they could face whatever came next, together. And in that certainty, the truth of their love was more than enough. The days that followed the revelation of Adrian's true identity were a whirlwind for Maya, but not in the chaotic, confusing way she had feared. Instead, they were filled with a quiet sense of clarity, as if the storm that had raged within her heart had finally passed, leaving behind a sense of peace and possibility. For the first time in months, Maya felt as though she could breathe freely, as though she had been given a second chance, not just at love, but at a new life, one she had never imagined for herself. Adrian's confession, though heavy with the weight of his past, had opened a door to a future that was no longer clouded by uncertainty. It was a future that was built on love, trust, and the willingness to embrace each other's truths, no matter how complicated they seemed. Maya knew that she could no longer remain in the shadows of her former life, hiding from the challenges that lay ahead. But the fear and doubt she had once felt had begun to fade, replaced by a quiet strength that came from knowing who she was and where she stood. Adrian, too, seemed to find a new sense of purpose in the days that followed. His royal responsibilities, which had once seemed like an impenetrable barrier between them, no longer felt like an obstacle. With Maya by his side, he was ready to face whatever his future as a prince demanded of him. He no longer had to hide behind a mask, pretending to be someone he was not. He could be the man he had always wanted to be, the man who loved Maya, who was willing to build a life with her, not as a prince and his wife, but as two people who had found something real. As the days turned into weeks, their life together began to settle into a peaceful rhythm. They spent their mornings in the garden, tending to the plants that had begun to flourish under Adrian's careful attention. Maya, once hesitant to take part in the tasks of the household, now found herself enjoying the simple joys of creating a home. She found peace in the small things, preparing meals together, sharing stories and taking walks through the village, where they were no longer strangers, but part of the community. But even as their lives seemed to settle, the world outside continued to turn, and Maya knew that the time would soon come for them to step into a larger world. The kingdom, Adrian's kingdom, still awaited him. His people, his royal duties, and the responsibilities he had left behind when he chose to live a quieter life with Maya were all waiting for him. The pull of his past life was undeniable, and though they had both chosen this new beginning, Maya understood that it wasn't just their future they were shaping, it was the future of the kingdom, too. One day, as they sat together by the fire, Adrian took her hand in his expression serious but filled with a quiet determination. "Maya," he began, his voice calm but resolute, "I've been thinking about what comes next. About my role in the kingdom and what it means for us. There's so much I need to do, so much I can't ignore. I've spent so long hiding from it, but I realize now that I can't run forever. I have responsibilities to my people, to the kingdom, and to the legacy of my family, and I need you by my side as I face them." Maya's heart swelled with pride as she listened to Adrian. She knew that he had always felt the weight of those responsibilities, but she also knew that his heart had always been with her, not in the palace or the throne room, but in the quiet moments they shared. He had chosen her, despite everything, and she had chosen him. "I'm here," Maya said softly, her voice filled with the certainty that had settled within her. "I've always been here. And I will be by your side, no matter what comes. We'll face it together, whatever it takes." Adrian's eyes softened, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he smiled, a smile that reached his eyes and lit up his face in a way that Maya hadn't seen before. It was a smile of relief, of understanding, of knowing that he didn't have to face his future alone. "You don't know how much that means to me," he said quietly. "With you by my side, I feel like I can face anything. We've built something real here, Maya, and I'm not going to let anything or anyone take that away from us." The weight of their words hung in the air between them, but it wasn't a burden. It was a promise of a future together, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. Maya had come to realize that it wasn't the title, the wealth, or the kingdom that mattered most. It was the love they shared, the quiet, steady love that had been tested by time, by secrets, and by the fears of the past. It was a love that was strong enough to withstand anything. Over the next few weeks, Adrian began to prepare for his return to the kingdom. Maya knew that this was the next step in their journey, the moment when their lives would change again, but this time it would be different. They would face it together. When the day finally came for them to leave their small home and journey to the palace, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The palace, the kingdom. It was a world she had never known, a world full of expectations, rules, and the grandeur of royal life. But she knew that she wasn't just going to the palace as Adrian's wife. She was going as Maya, the woman who had found her place in his heart and who had given him her heart in return. As they arrived at the grand gates of the palace, Maya felt a moment of hesitation. It was a place of power, of wealth, and of history. But as she looked at Adrian beside her, she realized that it was also the place where their love would continue to grow, where they would build their future together, not as the prince and his wife, but as two people who had found each other in a world full of chaos and uncertainty. The king and queen, Adrian's parents, welcomed them with open arms. Maya was nervous at first, unsure of how she would fit into the royal family, but their warmth and kindness quickly put her at ease. They could see the love between her and Adrian, and in their eyes, Maya found acceptance. She was not just the woman who had married their son. She was someone who had given Adrian something he had never found in his royal life: true love and peace. Maya's first days in the palace were a blur of new faces, new traditions, and a world far removed from the simple life she had known. But as she walked through the grand halls and gardens of the palace, she found a sense of belonging. This was her new life, yes, but it was a life built on love, not status, not titles. It was a life that would take time to adjust to, but it was a life that she was ready to embrace with Adrian by her side. And so, the new beginning had truly begun. Maya had left behind a world of loss and hardship, and Adrian had left behind his royal title to find something more meaningful, something real. Together, they were building a future, a legacy of love and resilience, one step at a time. The kingdom awaited them, but so did the life they had created in each other's hearts, a life that would stand the test of time. As Maya stood by Adrian's side, looking out over the kingdom that was now his to lead, she knew that whatever challenges they would face in the future, they would face them together. Their love, forged through adversity, was their greatest strength, and nothing, no title, no kingdom, could ever take that away from them. The future, though uncertain, was full of promise. Together, they would face whatever came next, and that, Maya knew, was all that mattered. And so, Maya and Adrian stepped into their new life together, ready to face the future, no matter what it held. They had built a foundation on love, trust, and understanding, and now, as they embraced their new roles, side by side, they knew that they had overcome the greatest challenge of all, finding each other, despite the darkness that had surrounded them. Maya, who had once been lost in a world of grief and betrayal, now stood tall with Adrian by her side, no longer just a prince and his wife, but two souls who had found peace in each other's arms. Their love was the true wealth, the real power that could never be taken away. Together, they had built a new beginning, one filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of a love that would endure. As the sun set over the kingdom, Adrian and Maya stood together, hand in hand, looking out over the vast lands they would share, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey. And whatever came next, they were ready for it. Together. Thank you for watching. Did you enjoy the story? What do you think about Maya and Adrian's journey? How would you feel if you were in Maya's shoes? Would you be able to trust someone who had kept a big secret from you? Or would it change everything? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a rating from 1 to 10. Your feedback really helps me create more content you'll love. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories. I have a lot of exciting content planned, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, true love is always worth fighting for.